All right, guys. So here we have the actual stepper driver that comes out of the Dreamer NX that I have. I believe most of the Flashforges are honestly like this as well. So pulled that out. This is what it looks like. And we are going to be upgrading it. So this, I believe, is an A988. It is. See that they're A988. And we're going to be upgrading to a TMC2209, I believe. So this is a TMC2208. They're very similar, almost like these are for 3D printers. You just drop them in. The only problem with this is if you look at this one right here, you can see the numbers or the wording on there. If I put this one up here, this is where the heatsink goes, so it sits on top of it, but they don't match up. So if you put them into the wrong thing, you can actually fry your printer, you can fry the driver, and that's just a bad day for everybody. So what we want to do is orientate this so that they are the same orientation. Only problem with that is with this, if I put direction, that's what DIR stands for, into the top left corner, so it's the same as this one, so you see they're about the same. Doesn't matter that you like this one's upside down, it's just that pin that matters. So if top right's direction, you know, the top left is direction, top right is ground. You can see enable on the bottom left. So we know this is the correct orientation. The only problem is that this has the pins on the wrong side. Pins are on the bottom, pins are on the top. So this isn't going to work. If you have the soldering equipment, you could desolder all of these, but that's a lot of work. So we're going to do less work, and we're going to grab some TMC2209s. And with this, all I have to do is just, because this has no pins on it, I just need to find the direction. So direction's there, but it needs to be flipped. So all I have to do is flip it upside down. So now direction is going to be right here, top right, but then it's going to be top left now. And ground is top left, but when I flip it, it will be top right. So this is the correct orientation that I need. And then we have these pins that we're going to solder to it. And once that's done, we can put it in our printer. So I'm going to be using a breadboard. This is a breadboard I got a long time ago, fried it, or burnt it. So the way that I'm going to be doing this, let's put this here. So we know that my direction is going to be top right. So it's the one next to this little capacitor. So what I'll do is I'll just throw this in here. And just need to make sure, see alignment where it goes. The reason I'll be using this, I'll actually show you, is because if I was to just put this by hand, I turn this, because you want it to align with the breadboard or the pins that it's going to go into. Now, there's a lot of wiggle room, so if I start soldering like this, it could be off, but if I start like that, it can also be off, and that's going to make it a bad day for trying to align. So what I'll do is I'll throw it into something that it has to be aligned for. So this one. So then I can just solder it like this. It's already in the breadboard, so the alignment will be correct. I don't really have to worry about that. Take out the guesswork. So we just need to solder some stuff into there. So what I'm going to do, I have some of this solder stuff. I mean, any flux, this is flux, will technically work, but there's different qualities of what you want. So you could do this without flux. Flux just makes things a lot easier when you are soldering because of the oxidation process and all that fun stuff. So I'm just going to put some flux where I need. And again, you want to double check, triple check. So my direction's in my top right, and with this, direction will be on the top right. So the last thing you want is to solder this and not have it correct. So I'm just gonna go through and dab this with some flux. I mean, I can be lazy and just do that number, I guess. So then you're going to take your soldering iron, heat up to good temperature, take your solder, and you're just going to go one by one and start applying it. You can either do something simple where you just grab a little bit of solder and then touch it to each single spot, and it'll attach to it. So some people like to solder simply like that. Some people will just put the tip on the pin and kind of just push that solder into it. It's another one, and then you just go through, do all of them. So now, just check your little pins and see if they're good enough. I mean, they don't have to be perfect. You just don't want to put too much. You don't want them to connect, because if you connect, then you're making it short. So when you're done with that, now if I pull the whole thing off, might be a little warm, but now I have soldered pins to my driver. So show it again. So now I have my direction there. This is the other one. It would have to be flipped, but I don't have to worry about that one. But now I have my pins on the bottom. So if I flip over, see the directions now, the top left, and there's pins on the bottom. So all I have to do is put a heatsink on here and plug it in. So you shouldn't have to clean it off if you don't want, but I will probably clean mine off. So you're gonna wanna do this for all the drivers that you have. I believe with the Dreamer, I have the Dreamer NX, which is just one nozzle, but the Dreamer NX has 5. Actually, this printer actually came with 5, even though there's only one nozzle in there, one extruder. So if you want to do all 5, if you have the dual model, which is just a Dreamer, you can do 5 of these and we'll plug them in place. We'll go on to the next thing. If you just want to do 4, you can buy the 4, save you some money. One quick thing to add before we move on is that your orientation of these matters. You see the pins are not the same length. It's not evenly split. This is designed this way. So when you go in, you want to put the short side in like that. So you have the long ends sticking out on the bottom. They can go in like this, but that is incorrect. Otherwise, it'll have to sit like this, and then you're in this toboggle. So short side will go in. So here at the printer, this is the motherboard. I just got a close up on it right now. So looking at this, of course you want to look at the pins and make sure again that you put it in the same orientation, because let's say you direction is right here, so this one needs to be flipped over like this so it is the same. However, if you flip it this way, you will but you will probably fry your board or your driver, and you don't want that. So you have to make sure that you're putting it in the same way. So I just usually go off the direction pin. So if I look at this, see if it'll focus. Nope, not really. But my direction is this one right here. Come on. There we go. So my direction pin is this one right here. So I just got to make sure that it's faced like this. And then, I mean, once I know that, then I can kind of do them all. So the other last thing you really want is these heat sinks. All they do is, this is from another driver, but these will not come with the new ones, so you will have to buy them separately. Pretty much just sticks on top. One thing to note about these drivers, the A988s are passively cooled, meaning that regular airflow is enough to cool them. The TMCs, any SilentStepSticks, 2208s, 2209s, and I mean you got a bunch of other ones, they require active cooling, which means that they need some sort of fan on them or so. Now, luckily, I'll kind of move out. The Dreamer has this fan right here, so that actually allows you to, it should be enough to cool off these fans. If not, if I do have trouble with this, then I will be, let's say for longer prints or something like that, I start losing steps or something like that, then I will probably end up designing something to go over all of that, and I'll make a video on it. So moving on, we just want to make sure that we have that right orientation again. So my direction pin, and there's no such thing as over checking this, because you double, triple, quadruple check, because the worst thing having to do is buy a new printer. So, and I have fried a board, not this board, a long time ago when I first did one of these, so it's not fun stuff. So oops. This is from an old one, so it's just not sticky. So what you're gonna do is, again, remember direction. So my direction pin's there. So this is my potentiometer right here, this little screw thing, if it'll focus. And you're just gonna replace it to be the same. So I'll just do this one right here. You do wanna look at, see if it'll focus. On the Dreamer, down here you can see it says stepper B. So you wanna replace, you know, all the ones. If you have a Dreamer NX like I do, it's only going to be one of these. I'm not sure. This is stepper A, this is stepper B. I'm really not sure which one it's going to be, but I'll just do a test and put it in. So if you have the regular Dreamer with 2 nozzles, you're going to replace all 5. And with this, I only have 1 extruder, so that's only going to be one driver that I have to do instead of both. So again, remember your orientation, and then I'm just gonna pull it out. So I'll just do this one just for an example. So that's off. I got your new one. That's correct. And because we did everything in the breadboard, that's gonna slide in perfectly. So that's really it for just installation portion. I will get the heatsink on there, and then I'll get new heatsinks on there, and then we're gonna go into tuning these and changing the motor direction as well, because these will flip the motor direction. So if your gantry's right now moving left to right, it would do the opposite. So we just got to figure that part out, and we'll go on from there. Alright guys, so we come to the next part of the video. You will need a multimeter for this. We are going to set our voltage reference on the stepper drivers. Again, you will need a multimeter, and this is kind of where it gets a little harder, but I will explain for the most part how this printer works. So to see what your VREF is, you're going to place your negative lead from your multimeter onto a point that is a ground of sorts. I'm going to use the actual ground of the motherboard, because we have to take your positive lead and place it on the potentiometer here. And when you do that, I will place the potentiometer one first, and then I will put this here. Now that will give me a reading on my multimeter. You want to put your multimeter in DC power voltage, and you'll get a reading. Now you need to set it at a specific, or a range, a certain range of your motor, and there's a calculation that you have to do. So for the Flashforge Dreamer people, probably the NX and the regular, you should be able to go off of these settings. However, if you're doing this for a different printer, I do not know what motors you have in there, and you have to calculate this based off of your motor amperage. So I'll put something down in the description, or something that will lead you to where you can find out how that works. I will also link to the motors that are in these. You just want to take a picture of your motor, pretty much look it up, and find out what the amp, it's like max peak amps are, and then you plug that into your formula, then you go from there. So whenever you are, you see what your voltage is, you can come around, and the potentiometer has a little groove in there, and you just put your screwdriver in, and you turn it left or right. Mine's already set, so I'm not gonna bother with it, but you turn it left or right. You're gonna recheck and see what that voltage is, and it needs to be what you calculated. So for myself, I'm not running at the full peak amp. I'm running at 80%, so whatever the amps is of the motor, I will do a percentage of that. So the X and Y are 1 amp motors. Then let's say I did 80%, then it's going to be 0.8 times the RMS value of the TMC2209, which is 1.2, and whatever that equals, that's what I set this one to. So you're going to do that for all of your drivers, and remember, they're not all going to be the same, not necessarily. The Z motor is a little different. So for me, the Z motor, the stepper motor for the extruder are different, and then the X and Y motors are different as well. So They're like 3 sets, 3 different values that I have on mine. Of course, this will vary by your printer, so the best accurate way to do this is to actually look up your models of your motors and get that data sheet. So after that, we have one last step before we can start printing, and that is to change the motor direction. Now I have one more left to do, so you want to make sure you do this with the printer off. When you're doing the driver adjustments, you want to make sure that the printer is on so it has power going to it. You want to be very careful with putting these leads on things, because if they touch 2 different things, you can short, and that may fry your chip, that may fry your board, so you want to be very, very careful. So for me, I put my lead on the potentiometer first. I have a good steady hold on it, and then I'll place the other one into my negative lead for the motherboard. Now you have your motors that need to get swapped in direction because of the orientation of these 2209s. So I have one left to do. They are color coded in the Dreamer NX, but they are also labeled on the Flashforge. It's A stepper, Z stepper, Y stepper, and X stepper. So you want to remove the one that you have that you want to do. So in this case, I need to remove this one right here. This is the extruder, which is the A stepper. And what you're going to do is change out 2 of these pins. You're going to swap them. I'm going to do these 2. They're in a phase. In order to change, to make sure, if you want to make sure, they're typically right next to each other. But what you can do is, if I can plug this in here. So you can hold the 2 pins, and if you check continuity, I'm just in a diode mode, it beeps, so I know that those are the same phase, same coil. And I have verified that now with that check. So to do that, move this camera a little bit. Let me use some tweezers. I'm going to get in here. Careful for your fingers, but let's see, push down, because there's a little flap in these, and you want to push down in there. Also try not to stab yourself at the same time. And of course this angle makes it really hard. Alright, so I'm under there now. I think once you pretty much get it under there, it's pushed in. So you see your red is on this end, yellow's in the middle. Push that in. So now well, yellow's coming out. Looks like I didn't get the red. Alright, now I got the red. So just gonna swap these 2. So now, but first, before I do that, because I want them to stick again, they have a very, very small tab here that you want to lift up. Again, you can just use your nail. You want to be careful with it because you don't want to go too high, otherwise you'll break it off. So I got that little tab sticking up. That's this little tab right here. So now we're going to put them back, and we're going to swap them. So now the red will go into the middle one. Hopefully, maybe. See, now it won't come out anymore. We'll also do the same thing. The yellow also won't come back out. And then we will put our connector back. You're going to do that for all of your stepper drivers that you are replacing. So again, I only have 4 in this printer, so I've already done the other 3. That was the 4th one. Make sure you put them back in the right connector. They are color coded in my printer, so they may not be in yours, but just keep track of your stuff. Should be good. And then all that's really left is to put everything back together, test out something, and see if it works.